Recently, the internet was buzzing as they tried to figure out who Tom Brady was referring to in a recent episode of The Barbershop, in which the quarterback told a story of how one team decided to stick with their own QB and passed up on the 7-time Super Bowl champion as he entered free agency in 2020. And when he muttered the words,
"You're sticking with that motherfucker? Are you serious?"
everyone just assumed he was referring to Jimmy Garoppolo, the quarterback who Tom Brady felt was one day going to replace him at Foxborough. Quarterback controversies in the NFL are pretty few and far between. Teams make it their primary objective to have an undisputed number one quarterback. However, if history has taught us anything, it's that even the greatest QBs of the past have all at some point been embroiled in a quarterback controversy. Whether it's due to age or a decline in production, one fact remains: there's no escaping Father Time. He's simply undefeated. And in the case of former Patriots QB Tom Brady, who's managed to extend his career well into his 40s, the idea of him playing at this age 7 years ago seemed highly unlikely. Fast forward to today, and in that span of time, Brady has won 4 Super Bowls with the New England Patriots and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and really defied all his critics. During Tom's 20 seasons with the Patriots, he was for the most part always the undisputed QB. However, there was a point in time when a quarterback controversy began brewing in New England.
Billy Martin, straight from Brooklyn, better known as Brooklyn. Never taking shorts cause Brooklyn's the bomb.
Jimmy Garoppolo is the best looking guy in the NFL. She's always like, but Ma, it's Tom Brady. It ain't Tom Brady. It ain't Tom Brady. Give me Jimmy G, Italians all the way.
In the 2013 season, the New England Patriots campaign ended with a disappointing 26-10 away loss to the Denver Broncos in the AFC Championship game. This was a heartbreaking loss to the franchise, who had now lost 2 consecutive championship games, and after finishing the regular season going 12-4, were one of the Super Bowl contenders heading into the playoffs. Then a couple months later, a 37-year-old Tom Brady publicly announced the possibility of playing football well into his mid-40s, and coincidentally enough, this was the same year Bill Belichick drafted Jimmy Garoppolo in the 2nd round. Bill, largely considered the greatest head coach of all time, had a reputation of getting rid of players a year before their decline, and in Jimmy Garoppolo saw him as an insurance policy to one day succeed Brady at Foxborough. However, the only issue was, Tom wasn't ready to let go of that number 1 spot. While Brady has always played the company man in New England, never once stray away from the team first motto instilled by his head coach, he would always answer with a smile whenever asked about Jimmy Garoppolo. Yet this move by Belichick really had to sting for a quarterback who had given so much to his team. On top of accepting a salary well below market value pretty much his entire career, under the salary cap, this allowed Belichick to add an extra 1 or 2 key players to strengthen the roster every season. This type of sacrifice is pretty much non-existent in today's game. And sure, many will point to the fact that he's married to a supermodel wife with an estimated net worth of almost $500 million, but that being said, you just don't see anyone outside of Brady sacrifice this much financially for the sake of winning. So in Jimmy's rookie campaign, the quarterback saw only a handful of snaps in the 2014 season and was first introduced in a Week 4 game at Arrowhead Stadium, a game in which New England were down 41-7 in the 4th quarter. Tom was pulled in favor of the rookie, and in a short amount of time, Garoppolo impressed, completing 6 of 7 passes for 70 yards and connected with Gronkowski on a 13-yard touchdown pass. During the first 4 games of the 2014 season, Brady wasn't playing up to his usual standards, which began to be widely publicized in the media. During that span, he led the Patriots to a 2-2 record and recorded 4 TD passes to 2 interceptions and fumbled the ball 4 times. And after the Chiefs game, the media in the post-game press conference began to question whether a quarterback change was needed in New England.
Will the quarterback position be evaluated?
Anyways, Brady would squash any talk of a QB change on the very next week as he led his team with a resounding 43-17 win over the Cincinnati Bengals. The Patriots would then go on a 7-game winning streak and ended up winning 10 of their last 12 games after the Kansas City Massacre. Garoppolo would see a little action against the Bears, finishing the last drive in a 51-23 blowout, and in a Week 17 meaningless game against the Bills, the rookie played the entire second half. In the following 2015 campaign, Jimmy barely saw action, only really coming on the field to take knees in victory formation, and it wouldn't be until the next season where he truly got a chance to showcase his talents. But before Garoppolo ever started his first game, earlier in March of 2016, Tom had signed a 2-year extension for $41 million that included a $28 million signing bonus. And this deal would virtually allow the Patriots to move on from Tom in 2018 if the team wanted to transition to Garoppolo. Tom would have been 41 years of age in 2018, so Bill at the time clearly was thinking that it was highly possible that the quarterback's best days might be behind him. As a result, it made sense at the time for the team to only offer Brady a short-term extension, much to the disapproval of Brady himself, in the event that they would have to cut ties with the Hall of Fame QB. Guys, before we continue, do me a favor and turn on all notifications and smash the like button, as it really helps promote the video across the YouTube platform. 2016 was also an interesting year, as Tom Brady was faced with a 4-game suspension as part of his involvement in the Deflategate Scandal. While this was a harsh penalty handed down to him, it subsequently opened the door for Jimmy Garoppolo to start in weeks 1 to 4 in that campaign. And it's right around this time when reports were that Tom started to view Jimmy as a real threat. According to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, Brady was paranoid of any other quarterback taking snaps for the Patriots. If you talk to people close to Brady, one thing he feared for a long time is anyone taking snaps instead of him. Then he's going to see his future, the Patriots' future, potentially in Jimmy Garoppolo play. And what if he's good? Then it makes a very interesting decision for the Patriots next offseason. In his debut game against Arizona with no Gronkowski, the youngster led the Patriots to a fourth-quarter comeback as he got the offense down the field in field goal position, setting up a 32-yard kick for Gronkowski to win the game. Garoppolo had a good debut appearance, throwing for 264 yards along with 1 touchdown and 1 lost fumble. On his next start against the Dolphins, this is where Jimmy really impressed, as he came away with a home win against a division rival. Jimmy threw 3 TD passes before he was taken out of the game after he suffered a shoulder injury on a Kiko Alonso hit right before the half. Jacoby Brissett came in and finished the remainder of the game and would go on to start the next 2 games before Tom's suspension was over. Brissett would go on to lead his team to a win against Houston, but fell short at home against division rivals Buffalo, giving Brady a healthy 3-1 record and the division lead upon his return. So, at the time, Belichick's record without Tom Brady since taking over the starting quarterback position was now 13-6, and this ultimately began to raise the debate as to whether it was more Brady or Belichick that was the main driving force behind New England's success over the years. As much as people think Belichick doesn't read the papers or watch the morning sports debate shows, I'm gonna bet for a fact that he knew much of the discussion in the NFL centered around the Brady versus Belichick debate in Foxborough. In both individuals, you had 2 people who were largely responsible for all the success in the dynasty, and I'm pretty sure each thought they had more to do with it than the other. So put yourself in Belichick's position. Here's a coach with a massive ego and an unfinished legacy where he could prove to the world it was his system that was a main contributing factor to the dynasty. If he successfully transitioned to Jimmy Garoppolo and continued winning, this would surely made outsiders to think twice about Brady's impact. And I'm pretty sure Tom was thinking the same thing, which kinda shows you why each of them did not want to give in to the other during this power struggle. Meanwhile, during this period, while the pair of Brady and Garoppolo were friendly and cordial to one another, it's reported that much like other quarterback controversies of the past, the veteran QB wasn't one to help the youngster with his game. Thoughts of a mentorship were out the window, and Jimmy basically had to work on his mechanics and footwork himself, which is totally understandable. I can't picture anyone willingly assisting another individual whose sole focus was to improve to take your position. And one clear example would come after the Week 2 game against Miami, as upon injuring his shoulder, Garoppolo sought the advice of one of Brady's most trusted advisor, Alex Guerrero. Guerrero was a co-founder of Brady's TB12 Sports Therapy Center that assisted athletes, most notably Patriots players, in treating and recovering from injuries and providing health and wellness in a holistic approach. And as reported from ESPN's Seth Wickersham's piece in 2018, Jimmy booked an appointment to meet with Guerrero. Only when he arrived, the doors were locked. Nobody answered the front door or the following phone calls, leaving the QB to be treated by team trainers instead. Jimmy would eventually be treated by Alex Guerrero, but only 2 weeks after his initial appointment, which raised a lot of questions. However, a couple years later, in an interview with KNBR radio station, Jimmy refuted these claims. So the 2016 season ended with the Patriots lifting the Lombardi as Tom further cemented his legacy in NFL lore with a come-from-behind win in Super Bowl 51 while trailing 28-3 in the third quarter against the Atlanta Falcons. And this win pretty much delayed Belichick's plans to transition to Garoppolo as Tom was still playing at an MVP caliber level. In the following 2017 season, the Patriots got off to a 2-2 start after losses against the Kansas City Chiefs and the Carolina Panthers. And it's right around this time in October when a 41-year-old Tom Brady began to have several meetings with team owner Robert Kraft about the possibility of playing longer. With his contract coming up in 2018, Tom wanted to secure his long-term future with the franchise, but Belichick wasn't willing to give the veteran QB a long-term deal. To make matters worse, Garoppolo's rookie contract was up at the end of the season and was set to hit free agency in 2018. Belichick didn't want to trade the youngster, passing on offers in the offseason as he felt Jimmy was the future of the franchise. And this is where the quarterback controversy elevated during contract extension talks, as Garoppolo told the team he did not want to accept an extension if there's no guarantee in a starting position. He was now in his fourth season as a backup, and watching Tom come off a Super Bowl win, he had absolutely no idea how much longer Brady would continue on playing. So a meeting was held 2 weeks prior to the trade deadline that went on for hours, and the message was clear: trade Jimmy Garoppolo. Robert Kraft demanded his head coach trade the youngster and find and groom a new quarterback in the draft when the time came. And this obviously did not sit well with Bill, who had full autonomy when it came to the Patriots. But now here he was being told what to do with his roster, and how did he respond? Well, interestingly enough, Bill made a move that shocked many around the league. He contacted 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan and offered him Jimmy in exchange for a second-round pick. And this was much less than what the Patriots were being offered earlier this spring, as many believed Garoppolo would easily command a minimum of a first-round pick and maybe even 2 first-round picks to the right franchise. This left a lot of people to begin speculating that this was Bill's way of saying F you to the whole situation, or maybe he knew in San Francisco Jimmy would flourish, which would allow him to say I told you so later down the road. But whatever the case may be, Belichick wasn't happy with his owner meddling in on his team. On the other hand, Tom Brady seemed relieved as he began to find a new spark on the field, according to teammates. He was now the future of Foxborough and had his old pal Brian Hoyer as his backup. On top of that, it also seemed as though Kraft was fully committed to Tom and was in his corner. And while looking back, it's easy to say the team made the right decision in sticking with Tom, but back then, it wasn't as clear-cut. You gotta understand the franchise had a 41-year-old quarterback who began to show some wear and tear through injuries, and having to get rid of your 2 backup quarterbacks in a span of a few months was clearly not a Belichickian move. But more interestingly, I'm pretty sure Belichick is probably more upset now for not keeping Tom beyond the 2020 NFL season.